Could talk about our framework and what we do there. I mentioned it, but the talk is not about that. The talk is about ecosystems created by free tools, which I think is a very important topic that we should talk about. So, about me again. Can you read something? Okay. So you're not supposed to read the slides anyway. So again, my name is Markus. I work in developer relations at HP for WebOS and Enio. And here, so I love the web, communities, and mobile. And just look at it, at what position we are these days. We have so many communities, we have so much open technology we saw today, and everything of that is shared freely. How did that happen? How did we get so lucky? So, just for a moment, try to imagine a parallel world where a tool like PhoneGap would be licensed by device, or per app that you create with it, or per user that's using it even. Or a framework like our own, Enio, would be licensed per device, per app that you create, or even per user that uses the app. Just imagine that. Let's say $20 per device, $100 per app, $5 per users. Well, profit and collect underpants. But not so fast, because probably no one would use it these days. So no adoption, no one to use it, no adoption, and also there wouldn't be something like an ecosystem around it. So how did we get here? Let's go back a bit in history. And let's go back to the age of tools like MetroWorks, Borland, Clarion, and so on, which were back in the days sold to and only used by specialists that wrote software. Then you had all kinds of products that cost between 10,000 and 5,000 euros per license, or if you were lucky and just a hobbyist, you might get away with 200 euros to use the tool to write software. So you had closed tools, closed licensing, proprietary licensing, which made writing software first limited to specialists and also very limited to the one that could afford the software, and also it was basically paid to program. And that was not that long ago. Then we move a few years forward from that position. The rise of the web, we talked about that before, others talked about it before. The time of the browser wars, Netscape versus Internet Explorer, but also when the web really came up. And you probably also remember the attempts to control the web back then by single vendors, ActiveX and so on, where you say, okay, this is closed, this is proprietary, this is our own. Luckily, that didn't happen. What happened was basically a democratization of the web. So creation of websites, it's a bit similar than creating software, especially today. And there we saw a shift from specialists that created a website initially, but at the end of that evolution, you had basically had, everyone had the tools, the free tools, and the free browsers to write and consume software. And very interesting, is the web an open source environment by design? Maybe, but just look at the power of view source. So any website, no matter which one you go to, you can say view source, you see what someone did. And it's by default open source. No one says, hey, this is proprietary, you can look at it. You can, so. And also I think thanks to that, view source, I think, communities started to form about open exchange and share of information and code. And that's also, I think, one part of the democratization of the web, that you say, okay, here's my code, look at it, and then you can also go out and talk about it, and you can talk about it freely and not say, oh, I show this cool tool, but oh no, the code is my own, and or it's my employer's one. Which, that whole process led to the web as an ecosystem. The web turned into an ecosystem. It started with information, but especially these days, it's also lots of tools are in the web and based on top of the web, and lots of services. We also saw the barrier of entry for programmers was lowered through standards like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but also through the accessibility you had. People could approach those languages very easy and didn't have to buy expensive tools. So let's fast forward again to today. And we heard it a few times already, the age of mobile that we are. But you have to ask yourself, do we actually have a war of the browsers, the second coming? A bit comparable, I would more call it the war of the ecosystems, where the big players are trying to get you each into their own ecosystem. That also applies to software development. If you want to develop for the iOS ecosystem, you have to install, you have to own a Mac. On the other hand, you also have to own a Windows machine if you want to go to that ecosystem. It's a bit easier if you want to go to the Google ecosystem, because there you don't have an ecosystem in terms of machines, but in terms of Google services. But besides that, we also have the web that's still around in mobile, but it's not that strong yet. I hope that it gets strong again, because we saw a huge evolution of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, all in one term now, HTML called HTML5. And again, seen today, we see lots of movement in that area, also in JavaScript. And we also see an ubiquity. We have so many connected devices that can access the web. Basically, your car can access the web. Next thing, your TV too, and your phone. Everything can access the web. And also the expectations from a user that you basically can access your content and your data anywhere through the web. And then there is also a bigger role of JavaScript playing in mobile through that evolution of the tools. It's ubiquitous because basically every browser that exists can run JavaScript. And we also saw JavaScript went from just the client also to the server, so you can span a huge amount of places with JavaScript and the browser. And it's basically easy to learn. Native versus web came up today as well. And I know it's starting to sound like beating the dead horse. I know. I go into it a bit, but from a little bit a different angle. We just saw it in the talk before. What if web is native? We had WebOS as the pioneer, we have Chrome OS, we have Firefox OS as the new contender, where you say web is native. It's the same thing. Or what if it happens the apps are just on the web by default? Then you also don't say, well, is it native or web? No, it's the same thing. So that's one thing I say. The other thing I say, and that's not my idea, but I think it's a pretty powerful concept if you think about it. I say apps must die. This focus on apps that you say, okay, I have to start an app to do something. It's kind of, it comes basically from the mainframe. We have to say, yeah, I want to do something. Okay, start that app. From the desktop, I want to do something. Let's start this app. And then I say, let's go into just-in-time interaction. So today, if you want to interact with something or a place or a device, you download and install the app. If you're lucky, that's available for your platform. Then you use it, and then you forget about it because you probably don't need it anymore. Is this really where you want to go? One app for every service, every place, every hotel you go, every device you interact, and then you end up with 500 different apps on your device, and you don't remember which one to start, interact with what. Is this really where we want to go? What about, I want to interact. I have an automated discovery what's around to interact with. They provide a web-based app to interact with. I use it, I do what I want, I forget it. That would be ubiquity. But again, it's built on what we already have on the web. So that's a bit on the side, but I think it's already also really important to see that. So back to development. If you want to start mobile development, you don't have to buy the tools anymore on any platform, I think. The tools are free, but our questions, are they really an entry into an ecosystem? As I said before, you go either into the Apple ecosystem by buying a Mac, you go into the Windows ecosystem by buying a PC, and so on. So is that just free beer, or is that also freedom? If you start with web development, you usually have open source tools and open source frameworks, and they are free and freedom. And again, in a web development environment these days, you have a low barrier of entry. JavaScript, HTML, CSS are ubiquitous together with the browser. They are everywhere. And the barrier of entry for a newcomer to get into that are really low. And, very important, you have communities. And it's also important to say, if you want to form communities around products or web development tools, it's important to say that you need mutual respect and also voluntary engagement, because the company creating the tool is saying, I put it out for free, people use it for free, people respect each other and their choice, and they also say, they invest the time to bring it out, I invest time to use it. But this makes the community stronger, and again, also the product is stronger. And also, without a strong community, the tool might not have much relevance. If you say, okay, this tool costs that much, we don't talk about it, it's all proprietary. These days, I think if you don't have a community around that, because it can't form because of that closeness, then it might just not have the relevance. So again, in the web development environment, the free tool ecosystem is key, I would say. So back to $20 per device, $100 per app, and $5 per user licensing of development tools. Well, it's nice, we could get rich. What about profit? Since we also want to pay our bills. So with free tools, how do we make money? And what we see is the shifting the role of the tools and the frameworks in the development environment. There's one word I can say to that: enabler. So the tool or the framework is starting to be the enabler, and then you use that to enable you to create services or products enabled by those tools, instead of just selling something, licensing something, and then say, oh, that's done, I have my money. But we also see the evolution of the framework tool to say, okay, it's more than just a tool. Of course, you have support and consulting, but also you might start to offer a development environment for that tool, a build environment for that tool, PhoneGap Build, for example, or also you might offer cloud APIs. And then I don't think anyone says, doesn't want to pay for that if you're using it, the tool to enable, but the services on top to make it even more. So let's look at some ecosystem examples in that area. I picked three. There are more. PhoneGap, Cordova, and Enyo, and jQuery. So the first one is PhoneGap Cordova. So the ecosystem is around consulting, probably less now that it has been bought by Adobe, and services and top end for PhoneGap. And just look at how many apps came to the market because of PhoneGap. That's so much more. And look at how many big name committers you have to the code. Companies like RIM, HP, Intel, and so on. Again, would a paid license model have worked? I don't think so. No one would use it in these days' world. Let's talk about Enyo, our own framework. I'll talk about a bit more because you might not know it. It was open sourced in 2012. It has the Apache 2 license, so it's very, very liberate licensed. The goals of it, just in one sentence, building native-like applications experience with JavaScript across platforms, desktop and mobile. So I invite you to check it out. It's pretty cool. You can also talk to me if you want to know more, and that's the end of my sponsored talk part. But again, let's look what it means since we are giving it away. It's free. It's an enabler not only for HP to create something, but also an enabler for other companies that use it to again build services based on Enyo. Also for HP, because HP does a lot of service providing to other companies, we can use that as an enabler. It's also the development is in the open since it's open source. There is a community involvement. One example is a community gallery where developers can provide their components that they wrote for Enyo. Again, would a paid license model work where you say, okay, to use it you have to pay $100 per app? Probably not, because you would be like, well, I just use something else. jQuery has been around for a long time. You have jQuery, jQuery Mobile, jQuery UI, plugins, themes. You have such a huge amount around in terms of an ecosystem. Just look at all the websites, all the applications that are written with jQuery-related tools. You have consulting and services built with and on top of jQuery. Again, jQuery came out and said, okay, you have to license it to use it. I don't think there would be an ecosystem or people using it, or not that many. So, as a conclusion, those ecosystems by freedom that we have now lead to more than if you would just sell a tool. The value of such an ecosystem is so much more than just the value of okay, I sold 1 million licenses of that tool. So keep the web development ecosystem free and in freedom. Love the web, love JavaScript, and be the community. Thank you.